Tensions erupt as U.S. officials reportedly label Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu a madman following intense airstrikes on Damascus. The strikes, which hit civilian zones, have drawn global condemnation and raised fears of wider conflict. Watch the full video for key statements, international fallout, and what this means for U.S.-Israel relations.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a situation that really shines a light on just how delicate things can be internationally.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like the Middle East.
Absolutely. It's incredibly volatile.
We're zeroing in on something recent, something intense. Military action in Syria and the immediate and pretty profound diplomatic shockwaves it sent out. This isn't just some far-off event. It's almost a textbook case, you know? How quickly the whole geopolitical landscape can change.
It really is a stark reminder.
Now, our whole deep dive today is anchored in one specific, pretty potent source.
Excerpts from an article with a very direct title, Netanyahu's Reckless Damascus Strikes Risk Mideast Peace.
Doesn't pull any punches, that title.
Not at all. And it's not just laying out facts. It offers a really sharp perspective on these actions and, crucially, spells out the potential severe consequences.
Right. So our mission, like always, is to unpack the key takeaways from this material. We want to help you quickly get a handle on the main players, the specific actions that sort of lit the fuse, and the really high-stakes warnings that are packed into this piece.
Yeah, the goal is making sure you walk away feeling truly informed about what's, well, a very complex situation.
Exactly.
And it's not just about, knowing what happened. What we're really trying to understand today is the why. Why were the reactions from other countries so strong?
Right. The intensity.
Yes. And what are the bigger implications for peace efforts in a region that, frankly, cannot handle much more instability? This source gives us a pretty unique, immediate look at the diplomatic alarm bells ringing right after these events happen.
Like a window into that immediate anxiety.
Precisely. A rare glimpse into how international players were reacting in basically real time.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack this. Our source puts us right there at the initial event. It states very clearly, Israeli strikes on Syria, including military targets in Damascus.
That's the catalyst right there.
Yeah, this is the action that sets everything else in motion. It sounds simple, concise, but it carries enormous weight, especially, given the history.
Oh, absolutely. Israel striking targets in Syria isn't new, per se. They often target Iranian proxies or weapons convoys.
Right, that's been a known pattern.
But hitting military targets inside Damascus, the capital city, that feels like a deliberate step up, an escalation from maybe previous norms.
Talk about that significance. Why Damascus specifically? It's not just another city, is it?
No, not at all. Damascus is, it's the nerve center of the Syrian regime. It's ancient, obviously. But politically, it is the absolute seat of power. So for any foreign power to strike within the city limits, even if they stick strictly to military objectives, it's a major statement, a strategic assertion.
More than just hitting a target.
Much more. It's a direct challenge to sovereignty. It's showing capability, resolve, right in the opponent's most guarded area. There's a huge symbolic weight to it.
Like a psychological blow, too.
Definitely. Think less surgical strike, more like a thunderclap right over the heart of the state. And the immediate regional impact. In a place already on edge, like the Middle East, it's huge.
Everyone's watching.
Everyone. Every faction, every ally, every enemy. Any military move there, no matter how targeted they claim it is, can be misinterpreted. Or worse, spun and escalated by actors with their own goals.
It's like tossing a match into dry tinder.
Exactly. A small spark can cause a massive fire. The risk of a wider conflict, that chain reaction, it's just incredibly high.
And the source is clear. These were Israeli strikes, including military targets in Damascus. No ambiguity there.
Right. And the strategic implications of hitting a capital, even just military sites, go beyond just tactical games. There's a message being sent.
What kind of message, potentially?
Well, it could be deterrence, a warning. Could be retaliation, maybe even preemption, trying to stop an imminent threat.
Okay.
But whatever the intent, there's always that massive risk of miscalculation, of escalation. Historically, strikes on a capital aren't just seen as hitting military stuff.
It's seen as more personal. An affront.
Exactly. An affront to national pride, to the government's legitimacy, to the state's stability. It can force the targeted nation to respond, maybe even against their better judgment, just to save face or project strength.
Right.
And even if they try hard to avoid civilian casualties, the political and psychological impact is immense. Domestically, in Syria, it could rally people or provoke anger. Internationally, allies and enemies are all recalculating.
So it automatically raises the stakes.
Considerably. It elevates the perceived severity, which likely leads to stronger, faster reactions from everyone involved. This move, as the source highlights, put the international community on high alert immediately. What's next? How do things shift now?
It's a calculated risk then, but with potentially huge cascading consequences.
Very high potential for unintended consequences, yes, across that whole complex web of alliances and rivalries.
And, as you said, the source is crystal clear. Israeli strikes on Syria, including military targets in Damascus. But wow, the reaction, particularly from the U.S., came fast and furious. The diplomatic fallout is where this gets really fascinating.
It reveals a lot.
Because here's where the source drops something truly striking. It says, U.S. officials have labeled Prime Minister Netanyahu's actions reckless.
Reckless. That's strong language between allies.
It really is. But then it goes even further. The source directly reports, U.S. calls Netanyahu a madman after airstrikes on Damascus.
Wow.
I'll just pause on that. Madman. That's not normal diplomatic talk, especially from the U.S. about the leader of Israel, a key ally.
Not even close to normal. It's extraordinary language.
So let's break down reckless first. In diplomatic speak, what does that actually imply? It's not just, I disagree, right?
No, it's much heavier than that. Reckless suggests a serious disregard for consequences, a lack of strategic thinking, or maybe actions that actively harm shared goals.
So it's a judgment on the wisdom of the action itself.
Yes. It implies the U.S. officials saw these strikes as not just ill-advised, but potentially damaging to mutual interests. Maybe destabilizing, maybe undermining other efforts.
It signals a pretty deep frustration then.
Absolutely. A frustration, maybe a breakdown in coordination, perhaps even an erosion of trust about strategic decision-making in such a sensitive area. It's saying this deviates from rational behavior within our alliance.
Suggesting the strikes were seen as harming broader U.S. goals in the region.
That seems to be the clear implication, according to the source.
Okay, but then the madman comment. That takes it to a whole other level.
It really does. What's frankly almost historically fascinating here is that specific word, madman. As you said, it's not just unusual, it's virtually unheard of in modern U.S. diplomacy regarding a major ally.
And the source attributes it to U.S. officials.
Right, which is critical. This isn't just some anonymous blogger. Madman goes way beyond reckless. It's informal, highly provocative, and deeply insulting.
What does its use signify, do you think? Even if leaked or unofficial as presented?
It signifies an extreme level of disapproval. Alarm, maybe even desperation within parts of the U.S. administration. It suggests that, in the view of these officials, Netanyahu's actions weren't just strategically flawed,
but irrational.
Yeah.
Impulsive.
Exactly. Dangerously impulsive, maybe detached from reality. That kind of language points to a massive crack, maybe even a chasm in the relationship. It's moved beyond policy disagreement to a fundamental judgment on the leader's character and judgment.
A feeling that the actions were genuinely threatening to U.S. objectives.
Precisely. When language like that surfaces, even unofficially, from high levels of an allied government, it's a huge red flag. It suggests traditional diplomatic restraint has broken down, perhaps out of sheer frustration.
So it indicates a relationship under immense strain.
Immense strain, where the U.S. might be seriously reconsidering its approach or level of support.
Yeah, the direct report, U.S. calls Netanyahu a madman after airstrikes on Damascus, is just astounding for its bluntness and what it implies about the U.S.-Israel relationship at that moment. So, thinking about that relationship, historically seen as so solid, what does this level of condemnation, as the source presents it, tell us about the dynamics then?
Well, it suggests the frustrations weren't just about this one incident, right? Maybe it points to a pattern, a fundamental clash on strategy, or maybe a feeling that consultation wasn't happening.
A lack of coordination being a major issue.
Potentially. It implies that the normal ways of expressing concern either failed or weren't deemed enough, leading to this kind of extraordinary airing of grievances. It's a powerful signal.
And how might labels like these affect things going forward, diplomatic interactions? Words like madman, they don't just disappear?
No, they leave scars. They can seriously erode trust, make future negotiations way more complicated. They could even embolden adversaries who see a split in the alliance.
That's a key point. Adversaries might see weakness or division.
Right. If they perceive the U.S. and Israel are deeply at odds, they might feel freer to act more aggressively, thinking that united front isn't there anymore.
It could force a rethink of cooperation on security, intelligence,
Absolutely. It could make future cooperation on really sensitive issues much harder because there's now this public record of deep distrust and disapproval. Other actors can use that, exploit those tensions.
And it creates political pressure domestically for both leaders, too, I imagine.
Definitely. They have to respond to perceptions of disunity or weakness. It puts everyone in a difficult position.
Okay, and here's where it gets really compelling for me, because these aren't just angry words. The source connects them directly to tangible risks for major diplomatic efforts.
Yes, the consequences.
The source immediately flags that these actions and the reaction to them risk undermining Trump's Middle East peace strategy.
That's a significant warning.
Let's unpack undermining. That's a strong verb. What does it mean in this diplomatic context? It's not just disagreeing, is it?
No, undermining means actively weakening, damaging the foundations, jeopardizing the whole thing. It implies working against it, whether intentionally or not.
Okay, so let's provide a bit of context, neutrally. The Trump administration's peace strategy, often called the deal of the century, was aimed largely at normalization between Israel and several Arab states, right? Often focusing on economic ties. And it had a, let's say, controversial approach to the Palestinian issue compared to past efforts.
Right. It was a complex diplomatic framework focused on those Abraham Accords, shifting dynamics significantly.
So for these strikes to be seen as undermining, that strategy suggests they were viewed as actively harming that complex structure, counteracting the groundwork that had been laid.
Exactly. The source doesn't need to detail the whole strategy for us to get the point. Diplomats saw these specific strikes as detrimental, not helpful, but harmful to that broader initiative.
It highlights a real disconnect then. An ally's military action seen as directly clashing with the major diplomatic goals of its main partner.
It's like trying to build something intricate, and someone on your team starts knocking down walls. It shows how localized military moves can just cascade through and wreck larger diplomatic plans.
And damage trust not just between the U.S. and Israel, but maybe with the other regional players involved in that strategy.
Absolutely. It makes everyone question the viability, the sincerity of the whole effort. If one key player acts like this, why should others stick their necks out?
So linking this back, it suggests these strikes weren't just tactical decisions, but seen as directly conflicting with a major established diplomatic push.
Yeah, a path with significant political capital invested in it. And peace strategies, especially in the Middle East, are incredibly fragile ecosystems.
Right, multi-layered.
Very complex negotiations, confidence-building steps, economic carrots, careful sequencing, and unexpected military action, even for a specific security reason, can just shatter that delicate process.
Create new tensions, harden positions.
Provide excuses for others to escalate, destroy trust. Strategy implies coordination, a long view. Actions seen as undermining it attack its very credibility.
It really raises questions about consultation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or the lack of it, between the U.S. and Israel before these strikes.
It certainly implies a significant divergence in strategic thinking, or maybe even a disregard for U.S. concerns. Suggests real friction within the alliance at that point.
And that speaks volumes about the challenge of keeping a big peace plan on track when allies' actions seem to be pulling in opposite directions. What kinds of trust issues arise if one side thinks its ally is sabotaging its main diplomatic goal?
Well, you could see a serious chilling of intelligence sharing, strategic planning cooperation, even political backing internationally. That essential trust needed for collaboration for a united front, it could just evaporate.
Makes future initiatives much harder to launch.
Much harder. Other parties become skeptical. Why invest time and trust if unilateral actions can just blow it all up? Mediators look foolish.
So that direct quote from the source, diplomats warn they risk undermining Trump's Middle East peace strategy. It's not just concern, it's alarm. Maybe even a sense of betrayal.
It signals a major strategic split within the alliance itself. Absolutely.
Okay, so moving from that broad strategy down to something very specific, very human on the ground. The source highlights another critical worry: the potential to derail ongoing ceasefire efforts in Druze majority Sweden.
Yes, this brings it down to a very local, very fragile level.
Talk about the word derailing here. Again, it's a strong word. What does that imply for ceasefire talks?
It means stopping them cold, reversing progress. Ceasefire negotiations are often incredibly slow, painstaking, built on maybe the thinnest threads of trust between groups that were just fighting each other.
Involving huge risks for everyone involved, mediators, local leaders.
Immense risks. Agreeing to pause fighting means life or death for people. So for that effort to be derailed by an external action, it just underscores how fragile these local agreements are and how interconnected everything is in Syria.
Now, the specific mention, Druze majority Swida. Why is that detail significant?
It's very significant. Swida province is the main area for the Druze community in Syria. They're a distinct ethno-religious group, and they've often tried to navigate a difficult path, trying to maintain some neutrality in the wider civil war.
Dealing with the regime, opposition groups, ISIS remnants. A complex position.
Extremely complex. Their stability is always precarious. So the fact that there were ongoing ceasefire efforts there points to a very specific, delicate local process, likely aimed at stopping clashes between certain groups, protecting civilians, maybe getting aid in.
So it highlights that peace in Syria isn't one big thing, but lots of these fragile local deal.
Exactly. A patchwork of delicate, active processes, all highly vulnerable to external shocks. These ongoing ceasefire efforts mean it was a live situation where actions far away could have immediate, devastating consequences on the ground.
This really raises the question you brought up earlier.
Yeah.
Why Swida specifically mentioned in the source.
Well, I think it perfectly illustrates how external military actions are deeply intertwined with these incredibly fragile, ground-level peace initiatives.
These local ceasefires are like building blocks.
Crucial building blocks for any wider stability. They show de-escalation is possible. They build a tiny bit of trust. They offer models, hope maybe, for other areas.
So when one gets derailed, especially by an outside force,
it sends a terrible message, not just to the people in Sweden, but across the whole region. It suggests that factors beyond local control, beyond even the mediators, can just wipe out any progress.
Undermines confidence in the whole idea of making peace.
Severely. It shows how even seemingly unrelated military strikes can have immediate negative impacts locally, making it much harder to start or sustain talks elsewhere. It also just highlights the sheer complexity of Syria, local issues, external powers, regional rivalries, all tangled together.
And the impact on the people there, caught in the middle, must be immense.
Devastating. Often they bear the brunt when ceasefires collapse.
So think about that domino effect. If one ceasefire fails because of outside actions, what does that signal to other groups, other negotiators?
It breeds cynicism.
Right.
Why bother negotiating? Why make concessions if some external actor can just undo it all with a bombing run? It makes parties much less willing to engage.
It erodes trust for the future, hardens positions maybe.
Could lead to a return to fighting in places that were close to peace. It's a major blow to the credibility of international mediation efforts, too.
That specific mention of Druze majority Swida really drives home the human cost behind the diplomatic language, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It makes it real.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what does it mean for you listening, trying to understand these complex dynamics? We've gone deep into the details, but let's pull back and synthesize the risks, focusing on that main theme from the source.
Mm-hmm.
The title says it all, really. Netanyahu's reckless Damascus strikes risk Mideast peace. That encapsulates the whole story we've unpacked.
It does.
We looked at the specific action, Israeli strikes, military targets, Damascus. Then the really strong, unprecedented U.S. diplomatic reaction, reckless, and that shocking report of the Madman label from U.S. officials.
Yeah, the language was key.
And then the direct consequences spelled out. The threat to a major peace strategy, Trump's strategy, and the potential derailing of that specific fragile ceasefire in Swida.
Right.
All these threads, pulled from the source, they weave together this picture, a picture of how one series of strikes, according to this source, could have such immediate destabilizing ripples across the region, damaging stability, damaging trust.
It's a classic example of the butterfly effect in geopolitics, isn't it? One action, maybe seen as justified by the actor, sends shockwaves through a fragile system.
Threatening years of diplomacy, risking wider conflict.
This source really peels back the curtain on the high-stakes game of Middle East diplomacy, shows how interconnected every single move is.
Yeah, and it powerfully illustrates that deep connection between military action and diplomacy in these really sensitive areas.
It really underscores that in a place like the Middle East, almost nothing happens in isolation. Every military decision, every diplomatic statement, even leaks, they all ripple through that complex web.
The strong language from the U.S. officials, the warnings about undermining peace.
It points to this clear, urgent understanding among diplomats. Kinetic actions have massive, far-reaching, non-kinetic consequences. It's always a high-wire act.
Balancing immediate security versus long-term diplomacy.
Exactly. And misjudgment or actions perceived as reckless can be devastating. for regional stability, for civilian lives, for the credibility of international efforts. It forces us to look beyond just the headlines.
See the deeper connections.
Recognize that every action has those wider ripples.
And for you, the listener, getting into reports like this, really parsing the language, the implications, it's so important. It's not just about staying current. It's about understanding the mechanics of international relations, of conflict, learning to read between the lines of official statements and, well, unofficial condemnations.
Right.
This deep dive really shows how fast things can escalate, how seemingly isolated incidents can vibrate through complex peace efforts, ultimately impacting millions and shaping a whole region's future.
The words used, the locations mentioned, the threats perceived, it all matters for understanding the true stakes.
Absolutely. That constant, precarious balancing act of global diplomacy.
Indeed.
So let's quickly recap our deep dive, based entirely on these excerpts from Netanyahu's reckless Damascus strikes risk Mideast peace. We unpack the specific Israeli strikes on military targets in Damascus.
Okay.
We explored that immediate, really unprecedented U.S. diplomatic response officials calling the actions reckless, and that stunning report about the Madman label.
Can't forget that one.
Then we looked at the profound warnings. These actions risked undermining Trump's broader Middle East peace strategy.
And potentially derailing those critical ongoing ceasefire efforts in Drew's majority Sweden.
Exactly. All points drawn directly from our source, painting that stark picture of the immediate fallout.
A very clear narrative from that specific perspective.
Okay, so this deep dive, rooted in that source, really highlights the intense pressure points in the Middle East. And it leaves us with perhaps a provocative thought to mull over. If even a powerful ally's actions, Israel's in this case, are described in such stark, almost unheard of terms like reckless and madman by its closest partner, and if those actions carry immediate warnings about derailing peace strategies and specific ceasefires, what does that truly tell us about the sheer knife-edge fragility of stability in that region?
It suggests it's incredibly fragile.
And what does it say about the constant, maybe exhausting balancing act required? Not just by the nations directly involved in conflict, but by their allies too, just to prevent things from spiraling completely out of control.
It's a perpetual challenge.
It reminds us, I think, that peace isn't some fixed state you arrive at. It's perpetually precarious, always vulnerable to a single perceived reckless act, and maybe only held together by this incredibly delicate web of trust and strategic coordination.
A sobering thought to end on.
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next time for another plunge into the topics.
Thanks for watching Global Mind News. If you found this report helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you the facts, insights, and updates that matter, straight from the source. See you in the next report.